Welcome back to another retro review. Before being purchased by Microsoft, Rare was an independent video game development studio based out of the United Kingdom. They started out in 1985 developing games for the ZX Spectrum computer, and within a year or two started making games for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Rare would become well known for some amazing games including Battletoads, Snake Rattle and Roll, the SNES Donkey Kong Country games, Killer Instinct, GoldenEye 007, Banjo-Kazooie, and Conker's Bad Fur Day, just to name a few. Rare developed 35 games for the NES and ported an additional 12 games between 1985 and 1993. Besides being known for their mostly high-quality games, Rare was also known for making some of the toughest games for the system. When people refer to games as NES hard, Rare games stand a tier above that in difficulty. But the thing is, because Rare's games are well designed with good gameplay mechanics, controls, and level designs, many people don't seem to mind the crushing difficulty. These are games where you'll die countless times but keep coming back for more because you know when you die in one of these games, it's not because of some cheap or unfair enemy placement, bad collision detection, or unresponsive controls. It was because you weren't good enough to master that part of the game. Solar Jetman, Hunt for the Golden Warship, is quite possibly the most difficult game that Rare ever made. Released in 1990, this game was praised for its innovative gameplay and physics engine, while the game's brutal difficulty was heavily criticized. I can completely agree with those assessments. This was a game that I got for a Christmas present one year, and was the only NES game that I owned as a child that I didn't like at the time. The difficulty was just too high for me at that age, and coming back 30 years later, it hasn't gotten any easier. Back then, I was only able to get to partway into the third level, and there are a total of 12. Luckily for me, my skills at video games have improved over time, and I finally gave this game another shot. I'm glad I did because this game is a very good and underrated game, though easy mode players need not apply. This game starts out difficult and it only gets harder from there. It took me a month of playing this game to beat it, and while the ending is typical for the NES, a screen of text and a single screen of animation before rolling the credits, it was the journey that was rewarding. This game is actually the third game in the Jetman series, with the previous two on the ZX Spectrum computer exclusively. The story is rather weak. The Golden Warship was one of the most powerful ships in Jetman's fleet, this federation of space loonies. Space pirates stole the ship and scattered the pieces across 12 worlds throughout the galaxy. Now you have to collect all 12 pieces and complete your mission, which is to destroy some strange alien monster. The game is a free-roaming spaceship shooter. There are 12 planets that you'll visit, and each planet acts as a level. The goal of each level is to find a piece of the Golden Warship on each planet. But before you can gain access to the ship piece, you'll need to resupply your mothership with fuel. You'll accomplish this by navigating the planet in your space pod, which launches from the mothership. This game is very much about exploration. Planets are divided into multiple continuous areas. There's the above-ground areas where you'll have a lot of space to move around. There are also underground caves to explore on many of the planets. A few planets, like the final planet, have a maze area built by some ancient civilization. The first planet is rather small and allows you to get accustomed to the controls and gameplay. All of the other planets are huge, and you'll be spending a lot of time exploring. Each planet can take between 30 minutes to an hour to complete, and that's when you have an idea of where you're going. The game does have a map feature, which you acquire early on in the game. Later in the game, you can upgrade your map to also display the locations of items scattered across the planet. This map is very detailed and is essential to finding your way through the game. Luckily, this game has a password feature that allows you to start at the most recent planet. The password is a little bit long, but it does save all your upgrades and progress. As you explore the planet, you'll find fuel canisters. Your pod has a tractor beam, and you'll need to deliver the fuel to your mothership. A gauge on the mothership will indicate how much fuel you'll need to take off, and it's different in every single level. Besides fuel, you'll also find an assortment of other things throughout the planet. One thing you'll find are gems. Taking these back to your ship gives you money as a reward. On top of that, collect enough gems and you'll get an extra life, so it's important to collect as many as possible. There are also abandoned cargo and nuclear materials to find. These also give you money, which you'll need to upgrade your pod and purchase additional weapons, shields, and engines. There are also secret warps in various stages. Some of these warps will allow you to jump ahead to a later level. One warp late in the game will even take you to a secret planet, allowing you to bypass 3 regular levels in the process. Some warps, on the other hand, access bonus rooms where you can collect gems to help gain extra lives. All of these warps require fast reflexes as they will disappear off screen very quickly, kind of like the warp in level 1 of Battletoads. Once you have fuel, a special warp corridor will open to a new underground area where the ship piece is hidden. You'll usually have to fight a strong mini-boss enemy in order to acquire the piece. After collecting the piece, you can continue to explore the stage looking for gems or supply crates, or blast off to the next world. Between some worlds, you'll have a chance to buy upgrades at a shop. You'll absolutely need to buy the navigation system to access a map, and you'll need the pod upgrades as well. The first pod upgrade is a Japanese sports pod, and the best pod is of course the Italian racing jet pod. Not joking, that's what they're actually called in the game. These pods have better engines and armor. The funny thing is that if you warp to later levels, those warps conveniently skip the shops with the pod upgrades, making later levels even more difficult. The gameplay and controls are incredibly innovative, but also contribute to the difficulty. Your pod can turn in a total of 24 directions, giving you a lot of control when navigating the caves. Hitting the B button will activate your thrusters, and releasing the button cuts thrust. You fire your weapon with the A button. Holding select while thrusting activates your turbo thrusters once you've found that upgrade, and holding select and A fires missiles or drops bombs if you have them. Navigation is really simple. Left and right on the D-pad changes your pod's direction. Down on the D-pad will turn on your shields, and up deactivates your shields. Now for the thing that makes this game very difficult: gravity. Every planet has it, and it'll pull you towards its center. This means that not only will you have to navigate some very narrow corridors, but you'll also have to overcome gravity pulling you towards its origin. When you're holding something in your tractor beam, it has weight, and it varies depending on the object. This means your thrusters won't work quite as well, and in some cases it might pull you in the opposite direction towards the center of gravity. You can negate this issue with your turbo thrusters, but there is a downside to that which I'll get to a little later. Every planet has a different amount of gravity. That means you'll have to relearn how to effectively navigate across every single level of the game. Collision is also a big deal. If you run into an enemy or into the planet's surface, you'll take damage. The faster you collide, the more damage you'll take. Planets with high gravity will always pull you faster into the surface, so you'll have to be real careful. Some planets are also made of crystal, and collisions at even low speeds will do considerably more damage on those planets. You can mitigate this damage by activating your shields. You'll find this power up in the first level, and if you miss it, you'll have the opportunity to buy it at a shop later. Shields will negate almost all the damage of colliding into a surface, but there's a caveat. You can't use your tractor beam while your shields are up. You'll have to turn them off, making you vulnerable to collisions as well as enemy fire, which will usually destroy your ship within a few hits. On top of all this, your ship has limited fuel. From time to time, you may find refill canisters on the planet, but usually you're on your own. Returning to your mothership will also refill your pod's fuel. Running your thrusters will also use up fuel, and the higher the gravity, the more fuel you'll burn to move across the planet. Activating your turbo boosters will drain your fuel very fast. Taking a hit from an enemy or colliding into a wall will also reduce your fuel, so it also works as your health bar. You don't instantly die when your fuel is completely consumed. Your pod will explode and you'll have to navigate just as Solar Jetman. You still have a basic gun, but your shields and tractor beam are gone. Jetman can only thrust upward, and strangely, you have more precise control like this. Jetman is very weak though, so he can't take much damage. If you manage to get back to your mothership, you can get another pod and get back to your mission without a loss of a life. If you are destroyed just as Jetman, you'll lose a life. You start with 4 and there are no continues. Also, the password saves how many lives you have left, so be careful to get back to the mothership if you're running down on fuel. If you lose too many lives early on, it's better to start over with a password from an earlier planet. The final stage is broken up into 2 parts. In the first, you explore, destroy enemies, collect fuel, then get the final ship piece like usual. After that, the game goes into the final sequence. This is a straight horizontally scrolling shoot-'em-up section. At the end of this sequence is the final boss. I like that you got this segment, but unfortunately, if you die on this part, it's instant game over, regardless of how many lives you have in reserve. And there's no password for this final part. You'll have to start at Planet 12, which takes about 30 to 45 minutes to complete before you enter the final segment. There aren't that many different types of enemies, maybe about 10 total, and they're all unique looking with unique methods of attack. Small enemies are usually destroyed in a few shots, but larger enemies require you to find their weak spots and take numerous hits to destroy. This can be tough when an enemy is shooting bullets and homing bombs at you, while at the same time, smaller enemies are swarming around you. The graphics are pretty good. Backgrounds are pretty simple with a light star field above ground, blackness for the caves, and blue for underwater sections. Bonus areas have interesting backgrounds to liven things up. Each planet has unique looking surfaces, with some of the larger planets having multiple types of surfaces as you descend deeper and deeper into the planet. There's a unique sprite for all 24 positions your pod can face, and there's 3 different pod designs depending on which upgrades you have. I really enjoyed the sound in this game. Sound effects like bullets firing, thrusters activating, and explosions are all satisfying. The music is fantastic, if you can call it music. Most planets have a strange, haunting, amelodic track, similar in style to the music in Metroid, though it reminds me more of strange kinds of soundtracks found in science fiction movies of the 50s, with music produced on a theremin and electronically generated noises for ambient effect. It's definitely unique, but I could see why some people might not enjoy it and would rather have a more standard soundtrack. Overall, this is a solid title for the NES. I think that it's the hardest game on the system that I've completed. This put Ninja Gaiden and Castlevania 3's difficulty to shame. Despite the difficulty, I found it hard to put the controller down. When I died, I was immediately ready to start over again. The exploration aspect of the game was enjoyable, and you'll spend countless hours exploring all 13 worlds. I would have liked to have seen more enemies to fight in the game, but at the same time, I'm relieved that you're not forced to fight your way constantly through these massive worlds while trying to navigate small corridors. Having the shops between worlds with very useful items gives you a very good reason to seek out every possible treasure in the world so that you have enough money to get through to the next area. The only real downside is the level of difficulty. I had massive trouble with this title as a kid, and a lot of people will be turned off by how difficult the game is, and having to essentially relearn the controls on every planet due to the different gravity profiles. If you're up to the challenge of playing very difficult NES games, give this one a try. I highly recommend it, and with the password feature, you don't have to memorize every planet in order to get through the game in a decent amount of time. You can explore at your leisure. The first time through, you'll spend several hours on each planet, and with all the secrets, including an alternate path, you'll find a lot of replay value in this title. This game is of course available on the NES, and the cartridge is quite common and can be usually picked up for $10 or less. You can also find this game on Rare Replay for the Xbox One. Let me know in the comments if you played this game and your experiences with it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then.